Hello and welcome to my channel. This is my tropical garden here in the UK, and today I'm going to be talking about Colocasia. I've been growing Colocasia for about 12-13 years now. I've collected over probably 100 different varieties, of which I probably have about 50 to 60 varieties now, and I thought I'd go through a few of them, say what ones are good, what maybe not be so good, a few misconceptions about growing Colocasia. Now, the first thing I'd like to say is if it was USA, I'd be classed as Zone 8, but Zone 8 in the UK is a lot different to the zones in the US, basically because we just don't get the summer heat. Now, the misconception is we can grow a lot of these Colocasias and they can take real cold spells, but the UK in general, obviously that differs from the south of the UK right up to Scotland. The climate varies greatly, but for most of us there is not many varieties that we would probably class as hardy. So the two that we would class as hardy for the majority of people, and nothing is bulletproof, is Colocasia gayoligonghensis. Not an easy name to say, I know. Generally, this is probably the most cold hardy Colocasia, along with pink china. Out of the two, pink china is a much more sought after plant because it just looks good, multiplies well, and is generally the best Colocasia to grow in the UK as an all-rounder. But also well worth a try is the gayoligonghensis. Now, no plant is bulletproof. It's not so much the extreme temperatures that we get, because if they're mulched well, it's not really a problem. But if you've got them in real wet ground, it's not free draining enough, these plants can die just as well as any others. So free draining soil really does help. I know Colocasias love loads of water, but they love loads of water when it's warm, not when it's freezing cold in winter. So generally, if you plant any of these Colocasias, I always try to use free draining compost mix with compost and perlite, and then I can water them knowing that they are going to drain quite freely. So first of all, the two hardiest ones, gayoligonghensis and pink china. Now I'm going to move on to a few of the others. So this one here with its black shiny leaf, if any of you are looking at this video now going, I know what that is, that's Colocasia Black Magic, you are 100% wrong. Now, this is one of my pet hates about the growers in a lot of these countries. This plant is missold as Black Magic all the time. This is Colocasia Black Coral. A genuine Black Magic would never ever have glossy leaves. It would only ever have matte black leaves. But for some reason, the bulb companies and nurseries, whether they know or don't know, I haven't got a clue, but this all the time is referred to all over the Facebook pages and everything as Colocasia Black Magic. Now, that's not the person's fault that's brought this Colocasia, it's the person that sold it under the wrong name. So there's quite a few black leafed varieties, way too many for me to bring out and mention in a minute. That one is Colocasia Diamond Head, and for those that don't know, they would look almost the same. And to be fair, as they reach maturity, you can tell the differences, but as young plants, they are really hard to tell. So if your Colocasia has black glossy leaves, it cannot, whatever you may think, be Colocasia Black Magic. It has to be one of the other varieties. Now, these glossy leaf ones start off with matte black leaves, and as they get more exposure to the sun, they will turn glossy. So you may think that you have a Black Magic to start with because the leaves are a matte black, but once they start to gain the gloss, then most definitely you are not growing it. Now, in my opinion, of growing all these Colocasias and growing a genuine Black Magic, these are better plants. The black coral and the diamond head are less fussy, and that's my opinion, than the Black Magic. So they're easier to overwinter. I think they are just real good growers. So if you have got a glossy black leaf Colocasia, no worries, because they are really good plants. The one just behind that black coral, which is green with just the red veining, that is going to turn black, and that is Colocasia Redemption, which has now become very available in the UK, which I'm glad to say, as it's quite a striking Colocasia. It will get the pink lava type veins coming through the front as it matures, and quite interesting to see how it develops. In the US, they grow so much quicker. Generally, most of you get so much more heat than we do here, and you'll get a lot bigger Colocasias, a lot better colouring, and I could only wish for some of the growth that some of you get over there, but still love them. This one, Colocasia Pharaoh's Mask, in one of my other videos when I first got it, I did say it would be a bit of a diva to overwinter. That wasn't the case. I ended up with 4 of them, and to be fair, quite easy really. A couple went sort of semi-dormant, and as soon as it warmed up, picked straight back up. So yeah, can't moan too much really. I've had much harder Colocasias to overwinter than this plant. Like I said, that one is diamond head, and then going across this one with the black glossy leaf and the green vein. So if it's a black glossy leaf and a green vein, it's most likely, unless you've got one of the hybrids somewhere from Asia, is going to be Aloha, which grows to be a stunning plant. Now, for me in the UK, not a chance would this be hardy, nowhere near. But hearing from some of the growers in the US, they've left them out in much colder temperatures than we have, and they've come back. Now the difference is the summer heat. So we generally don't get real hot spell, well, we just generally don't get real hot spells until sort of June time, and then by then a lot of these have sat cold and wet for so long that they've just rotted away and they won't come back. This year we did have a quite warm June, so some of the black leaf Colocasias that normally wouldn't survive, and a few of the more tender ones, have come back, and that's because the heat has managed to sort of start them back into growth before they're fully rotted away. Now I've put a couple of little things down here, which is a corm and a runner. So if you look at the corm, the bottom, this is a Colocasia mammoth, this was, and it was in the ground, had completely rotted away, but the top bit, the new corm, has was a lot harder and has managed to stay firm and would still grow. So basically what happens is the corms rot from the bottom. Let me see if I can turn that over for you. Like that, they will rot through, but sometimes the corms that come on the outside, like on top or outside, seem to be a lot harder. So if you get the heat before they fully rot through, then these plants would be sort of classed as hardy, because they would keep coming back. It's all about how long they're in the ground for, how wet they are, and whether you get a hot enough spell to bring them out of the dormancy before they completely rot away. Now a lot of Colocasias that grow these, which are the runners, now the runner tends to be a lot harder as well than the corm, which is a softer material. So plants that produce runners, quite a lot of them will come back from the runners before they get a chance to rot if you get a hot spell. So that's why sometimes these plants can appear to be hardier than others, because the main corm might rot, but the sort of side corms or the offsets or the runners may still be intact when the hot spell comes, and then that will rejuvenate them and they'll start to grow. Right, so I don't keep going on. Colocasia Mojito, probably one of the best sort of known colocasias out there. Most people absolutely love it. It can be a little bit of a diva to overwinter sometimes. I've not found it too bad. I have done a video on how I overwinter some of my colocasias, my smaller tropical ones. As long as you're sort of giving it a certain amount of heat, I tend to keep them going. I don't like to let them go dormant, but that's my choice. There is sort of different ways of doing it, but an absolutely stunning colocasia. Now this one is Colocasia Yellow Splash. Absolute stunning colocasia. But what I found, and this was been grown in my greenhouse, is you have to make sure that when it's hot you've got some shade netting or something just to protect. It's a bit like if anyone grows kind of Stuttgart, the way the white sort of can burn a bit in the sun. Well, if you look at this damage, that was an almost pure yellow bit, and is there damage on the back leaf? Yeah, that's where they were exposed to sun. So this was then put under some shade netting, and we've got a perfectly good intact leaf and an absolute stunning colocasia, to be fair. Not too bad to overwinter. You can just sort of keep the sort of corms stroke rhizome type thing on the dry side, and then bring them back with some heat. So what else we got here? This one of my favorite plants, Colocasia Morning Dew. It's a green on green variegation, but this one, the leaves start off matte green, but then slowly go to this beautiful gloss leaf, which I absolutely love. And against sort of burgundy cannas and stuff, really does look good as a combination. This one, Colocasia El Payo, commonly known as Milky Way. I'd assume because these little flecks maybe look like the Milky Way galaxy. Can be a bit of a diva to get through winter, but well worth it if you can get it, you know, growing. It does sometimes have sort of half and half variegation, half white, half green. It doesn't always stay this speckled look. It can really produce some stunning looking leaves, so well worth a go. Green and white sort of stripy type stems. Yeah, really nice, but a little bit more hassle for some. So you may choose to go for some of the easy ones. And with that, I'll go to this one, which is Lemon and Lime Gecko. Variegated leaves, beautiful pinky red to white striped stems. I find it quite easy to get through winter. I think it's a good grower in the UK, as long as you've got some sort of warmth. I literally just let them sort of dry off, go dormant, and then they come back from the ground for me in my frost-free greenhouse. I've never tried them outside yet to see if they'd come back. I suppose that all depends on what sort of summer heat we get. Then we've got this one, and the leaves do vary on this, but that is a limeade, which is basically another green on green sort of variegation. Then we've got just a different variety of Colocasia esculenta there, which isn't actually named, but grows really big leaves. I'm going to see this year if it will contend to a mammoth, because it does get really big leaves, but it has got lovely red stems to it as well. So that will be really interesting to see how big I can actually get that this year. Next to it, this one with the upturned leaves is named Colocasia Coffee Cups. Now, it was missold many times in nurseries as Colocasia Teacups, but the original name was Coffee Cups, so that's the one I'm going to stick with. I've seen many people say that they grow teacups, and it is slightly different, darker leaves, longer leaves. I've never seen facts or a thing to prove that, so as far as I'm concerned, I'm going with the original name, which is Colocasia Coffee Cups. and I believe that it's named that because these upturned leaves, when they fill with water, they tip up like that and the water falls out. And a similar plant with upturned leaves, even though they're not very upturned at the minute, is this one, which is Colocasia bikini. Really burgundy stems, burgundy veins running through the back. And if you can get hold of it over here, grow it, because it grows quite well in cooler weather. I find it really easy to overwinter. Just let it go dormant, and it just seems in the frost-free greenhouse or something like that, and it will just come back from its runners. And for me anyway, I find it really simple. But on that note, I just want to point out that all these colocasias are planted in compost mixed with quite a fair share of perlite. Now the reason that being because the first thing the people will say is colocasias love water, right? But come the end of the season, come autumn time, when it starts to cool and the nights start getting to 7-8 degrees, some of these really tropical plants, and a lot of these are really tropical, they don't want to be sat in cold compost, cold water in sort of 7-8 degrees Celsius. They just don't like it. They'll start to go dormant. So if you can keep them in a free draining mix, and then you can apply the water, if you're growing in pots, this is, you can apply the water by just putting them in a tray of water underneath. And then if it gets really cold nights or cooler nights, you can take the trays out and let them drain off a bit. Now once it starts getting really cool, then you've obviously got to start to bring them in, because a lot of these plants, once it starts getting less than 10 Celsius, start to sulk like hell and go, oh, I don't like this, you know. But why should they? They come from super tropical countries. So just because we're forcing them to grow in our gardens doesn't mean they have to like it. So I don't think I've got really many more here. That's a blue Hawaii. So in general, I sort of just want to say that just because a lot of these, and if you're in the US, you'll think, no, that's hardy, that's hardy, that's hardy. That is totally understandable, because for you, they probably are. But because we don't get that summer heat that you do, a lot of these will not come back. If we don't get that summer heat, they will just completely rot away. So my advice is, once it starts to get cooler nights, bring them into a greenhouse, bring them into your house if you have to get them through winter. That's a whole different subject, how to overwinter a lot of these. Like I say, I have done a video on sort of overwintering tropical plants, tropical colocasias I should say, but that generally applies for really tropical colocasias and quite small plants that probably haven't built up the corm size to sort of get through a winter without it, really, because you can't sort of dry store them or that kind of thing. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I should be mentioning before I finish this up. But basically, for a lot of the people, especially in the UK, they are beautiful summer plants. A lot of people, that's a good point I want to say, a lot of people will buy a small colocasia, they'll put it in a huge pot, give it loads of water because they'll think it's summer, and then go, why is it not growing? Simple thing is because it's just going to be shocked. To be fair, you've just like put it in a real big pot, it's got way too much compost around it, full of water, the roots cannot absorb that amount of water. The main instigator for colocasia growth is heat. So when the compost or soil is really warm, colocasias will grow really well. That's when they want the water, that's when they want the feed. If you're getting a really crap summer with, you know, no cloudy days, no real heat, no nothing to get them going, you know, they can be fussy, and you could find that they really don't sort of do well at all, however much you're watering them, however much you're feeding them. But if it's warm or hot and you're feeding them and you're watering them, they should do really well for our summers. Now, colocasia is all about variety. Some varieties will grow much quicker and much easier than the others. Some come from a lot colder sort of environments. So Colocasia coal miner, for instance, does really well and still grows in colder and cooler locations, whereas some of them just want as much heat as they can get for growth. So I think I've mentioned everything that I wanted to. I probably haven't. As soon as I turn off this video, I'm probably going to remember, but for now I'm going to leave it at that. If you've got any comments, please let me know and I'll see if I can give you any advice. Like I say, there's a big comparison between how we can grow these in these cold, wet countries to how they do in the warm countries or the US. But most definitely for a tropical garden, I think a lot of them are a must. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.